Hello and welcome back. Today I'm excited to talk about a brand new release, and that is Mingus Takes Manhattan. This is a 4 LP box set that was just put out by Newland. I think it just shipped like a couple of weeks ago. It was originally slated, I think, for like last fall, and it was delayed, but now it's finally available. So that's what I want to dig into today. Talk a little bit about what I think about the box set. I'll kind of show you the packaging as well. Talk a little bit about the history as I often do. So that's kind of the agenda. As always, before we get into it, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and of course you can follow me on Instagram as well if you'd like. My handle is what_can_brown. All right, so again, this is what the box set looks like. So the full title is Mingus Takes Manhattan, The Complete Birdland Dates 1961 to 1962. So the reason why I think it makes sense that these sessions are compiled in this kind of format is because they represent really the evolution of Mingus's recordings of tracks that led up to his classic album, Oh Yeah, which looks like this, and then the sessions that immediately followed it as well. So Oh Yeah was recorded on November 6th of 1961. It was released in April of 1962. So the sessions then on this box set are October 61, so before that recording of Oh Yeah, and then 2 dates the following March, 2 in May and 2 in October, which obviously all followed the original recording, and many of those actually followed the release of it on vinyl as well. So Mingus wasn't really recording that often in terms of studio work. So if you look at his recorded dates, you know, from like 1959, 1960, 1961, etc., he was rarely, if ever, in a supporting role throughout, really, I don't want to say his entire career, because I think early on he certainly was, he was supporting other musicians, but for most of the rest of his entire career, he was not, he wasn't supporting anybody else. He was only doing his own work as a leader. And I think that because he wasn't recorded very often, it makes these workshop sessions that much more special, because it's really our only opportunity to see what Mingus was doing over the course of these years, is to either hear that, say, one album or two albums that came out in any given year, or it's to hear some live stuff. And there isn't that much out there in terms of his live recordings until you get into really the 70s. So this is, I think a special thing on its own that they have so much content that was recorded in 1961 and 1962, again, that kind of led up to the release of one of his most sort of pivotal albums of his entire career, Oh Yeah. All right, so just a bit about the packaging, because Newland did such a great job with their Dorothy Ashby box set that they put out last year, and this is essentially the next box set that we have from them. And this thing was done really, really nicely as well. So again, this is a 4 LP box set, again, released by Newland, which is out of the UK. This is also the first time, just as an aside, that this music has had a legitimate release on vinyl ever. So I guess, what do I mean by that? So there was a release around 1990 that was on vinyl. Apparently there was like 100 copies made of it, but it wasn't licensed, it wasn't approved, like it was a bootleg essentially. Otherwise, there have been some releases in Europe of this content on CD. However, that was also bootleg. This particular album or box set is the first time that it was done with permission by the Mingus estate, and so they have, you know, the rights to release this music and to charge money for it, and etc. So the source material for this is what they're calling the original reel-to-reel tapes used to record the radio broadcasts. Okay, so, you know, obviously not studio. I would say that it doesn't sound like these were sort of professional recordings, is what I would say. So I think if you're used to how some of the recent John Coltrane live sessions that have come out on vinyl, if you're used to how those sound, even like the Thelonious Monk sessions at Palo Alto, right? Some of these other live sessions, if you're used to kind of that sort of just not professionally recorded live dates. This, I would say, shares a similar type of sound with that. But what they did do, in contrast to any other time that this music has been released, whether digitally or on vinyl, is that they've cleaned and remastered the material, and so therefore it sounds better. So because this is a box set and because it's 4 LP, they've priced it at $155, which I actually think isn't that. I think that's actually pretty good for a 4 LP box set these days. And again, there is a lot of content. So I want to show you kind of the rest of the packaging though before we talk a little bit more about what's actually on these discs. So I've showed you enough of this fantastic image here, and here's what the back of the box looks like. There's the spine. Each of the records come in sort of variations of that original art, of that artwork that's on the front cover. So this is disc 1. You can kind of see that they've carried through, you know, the Mingus type there, and nice back here. So these aren't glossy. These are like just kind of like a heavy stock paper that holds each of the discs. So that's disc 1. Here you can see the slight variation for disc 2. You can see disc 3, and then disc 4. So all variations on the same thing and very, very similar in terms of the back. And what you get on the back is a outlining, because the sessions change and therefore the lineups change so significantly across all of these sessions, because Mingus frequently replaced his musicians in order to get the sounds that he wanted. And so it's helpful to have the rundown basically for every single session. We know exactly when it was recorded, who was on it, and then obviously the tracks that they play. So the other thing that this comes with that I just find extremely helpful, but you all know I really love history, is it comes with a 44-page book. I hesitate to call it a booklet because it's call it a book because it's so hefty. So again, 44 pages. In this book, there is a foreword that's written by Christian McBride. There's a lengthy essay by Brian Priestley, as well as an interview with Charles McPherson, who is not only plays on a number of these sessions, but is also still with us. And so they were able to interview Charles McPherson and ask him about his experience, both recording with Mingus, but also recording at this particular time with Mingus. And so I think that I just think that it's extremely helpful to have this type of content, because it really gives you a clue into what Mingus's process was like. And I think that it's critical to understand what I mean when I say his process, and what it means when we say the jazz workshop that that Mingus called his group. I think it's very important to understand that, because personally, I think it's key to appreciating this music to its fullest. All right, so a more detailed description of Mingus's jazz workshop, or really the jazz composer's workshop, is available in the included book of this box set. But I read that booklet, and then I happened to listen to an entire hour of the head of Atlantic Records interviewing Mingus around the time that Oh Yeah was being put out. And so he actually talks about all the compositions and added just a little bit more clarity about the process. And so I kind of wanted to, I guess, infuse some of that here and there throughout this video to kind of bring you up to speed. So essentially, Mingus put together a working group of musicians that would sort of rotate in and out depending on what he thought he wanted to hear, musicians that he was particularly impressed by. So he would kind of bring them in and audition them and keep them if he liked the way that they were playing, and he would kind of, tell others to say, take a hike, and bring in other musicians to replace them. And basically, he collected this group of musicians in the Jazz Composers Workshop, who would go and perform his compositions, almost exclusively Mingus's compositions, and sort of allow these musicians to feel out these compositions in a live format. So Mingus would oftentimes have essentially heads or themes, essentially melodies, right, that he would set up pieces with. So there was a little bit of structure, but then he would only have like suggestions in terms of chords or roots or scales that he would then give to the musicians and encourage them to play basically how they felt. With some sort of caveats, because meanwhile Mingus would be encouraging them like audibly, like talking to them or shouting at them live while they were playing, and kind of instructing them for how he wanted the piece to sort of come together. So his conducting was not the traditional sense with just a hand, but he would actually be giving them some instruction live in some of these performances as well. So some of his music was sort of worked out, I think, in part in rehearsal, but then also on stage in front of live audiences. And again, oftentimes there'd be no actual written pieces by the time they get to the actual session. Instead, these musicians would have sort of internalized the music at that point. So over time, through this type of format, and because Mingus would constantly rehearse the same compositions over the years, what would happen is that sometimes the pieces would change entirely. Sometimes they would just have like a different sort of feel or character to them. Sometimes even the names of the songs would change over time, which makes kind of tracking the evolution of some of Mingus's compositions a bit of a challenge. All right, so I want to bring back in this topic of Mingus's "Oh Yeah," because so like I said, "Oh Yeah" was sort of in the middle, right, of these sessions, and a lot of the stuff was being rehearsed for that album, and then continued to be essentially rehearsed live after the album. So I wanted to bring up the fact that a lot of the songs that appeared on "Oh Yeah" were in the Birdland sessions, right? But not all of them. In fact, I think actually there's only one track, Passions of a Man, that doesn't appear in the box set on any of the sessions on any of the discs, but I think it's just that one track. So otherwise, we have Hog Calling Blues, which is track 1, which appears here. There's Devil Woman, Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am, Ecclesiastics. The interesting one is Oh Lord, Don't Let Them Drop That Atomic Bomb on Me, because how he introduces it on in the box set is, "Oh Lord, don't let them drop that atomic bomb on me, drop it on themselves because they made it." So Mingus had a habit of having sort of like entertaining track names, and then the other one that appears in this box set is "Eat That Chicken." And the interesting thing about "Eat That Chicken" is that there are 7 different versions of it, I think. Yeah, there's 7 different versions in this box set. Now, I don't want you to think necessarily that it's terribly duplicative, because even though there are 7 versions on this, the interesting thing is that it is used as either an intro or an outro for these radio broadcasts. And so Symphony Sid is one of the announcers across these sessions. The other one's Pee Wee Marquette that you get to hear on this as well. But Symphony Sid will often be speaking while "Eat That Chicken" is being played. And so even though it appears in, I guess, almost every session, it's used in different ways. You get to hear different lengths of it, and then certainly I think there is one track on here where it's more of a like complete piece, and then certainly when it's on the actual album, it's a 4.5 minute piece, and so it's a lot more sort of robust. One thing to know about this box set is that at the same time that Mingus is actually vocalizing some of his instruction to the musicians, he also has started to incorporate a lot more what he calls hollering on this album. So this is not the first album that Mingus incorporated that hollering. In fact, he used it on Blues and Roots. But this is, I believe, and according to Mingus, I'd have to go back and double check, but this is, according to him, this is the first time where his vocalizations were actually mic'd, is on Mingus "Oh Yeah." And so it's interesting that in this in these Birdland sessions, he's holding nothing back. Like, you hear him in the background, probably while he's playing the bass or while he's playing the piano, because on this album he plays both, or in these sessions he plays both. But it's really interesting to hear so much of those vocalizations and used kind of in different ways, whether like exclamations or again instruction. And there's just a lot of there's just kind of a lot of chatter that he incorporates across these sessions. All right, so like I said, understanding Mingus's process, I just think, is so important when it comes to understanding, I think, what this box set is about. And so I wanted to just speak to a couple of more points specific to some of the songs that appear in the box set that are also on "Oh Yeah," because I think that they help. I just think they help like establish exactly what Mingus was trying to do, because I personally am a huge fan of Mingus, but I also know he's a complicated guy, and he has a bad reputation in sort of some circles about how he treated certain people and how he treated label executives and and people who are at these owners of clubs and things like that. And I think that you almost need to, in order to fully appreciate the music that is on this, you kind of have to remove the crazy from your perspective of who Mingus is and understand the complexity of him. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I want to say about that. So let's start with the track Ecclesiastics. So in Mingus's, again, very lengthy interview that he did with the Atlantic record executive, whose name's escaping me right now. It's Nesuhi Ertegun. I'm sure that I mispronounced it. I believe he's Turkish, but you should check that out. It's on YouTube, and I'll link it in the description. But basically, what Mingus was saying is that Ecclesiastics is about a struggle with himself, and this idea that he doesn't want to lie to himself. He stated in the interview that and this probably goes without saying given the time period, but he talks about how things are very unfair to Black people at this point in time, and yet there are some Black men who remain strong despite all of these challenges that are around them. And what he wanted to do was remove himself from the image about fighting club owners and damaging equipment. And he wanted to be accepted, I guess, by his own people as being a Black man. So he talks actually at length about this idea that growing up, he never felt like he belonged in the community because his community didn't accept him. Partially perhaps because of his lighter skin. So he basically he didn't feel like he was accepted by the Black community, and he certainly wasn't accepted by the white community either. And he found himself sort of becoming friends with other outcasts, and that was a big part about why he had this struggle again within himself, and that he didn't want to lie to himself about who he was, and that he what community he belonged to, and what maybe the expectations of him were. It's a fascinating interview, by the way. You should really check that out. The reason why I'm bringing this up, even just on this particular track, and I'm going to go through a couple of more, is because when you understand that these are the emotions that Mingus is trying to convey through his music, it gives you a different appreciation for how he was instructing his fellow musicians in the Jazz Composers Workshop about what he wanted them to play and the emotion that he wanted them to convey through their playing. And it makes perhaps more sense that he didn't feel like he could compose that or orchestrate it, put it all on the page. He wanted his musicians to basically evoke these feelings themselves, and have that be really the performance art sort of component of playing Mingus's music. And it just adds a completely different dynamic, I think, to what you would expect to hear when you're listening to this music, or really music that's on most of his albums. Although I think that Oh Yeah is a particularly sort of complex example of this. So Don't Let Them Drop That Atomic Bomb on Me is one that he got into as well. And he basically said that, his idea with this one is that what makes one man think that he can blow the world up when he isn't the one who made the world. So essentially, just because you made the atomic bomb makes you feel like you have permission to ruin the world. And I thought that was I don't know. I thought that was that's a multi-layered kind of thing. Let's see what else. So Hog Calling Blues. He said he titled Hog Calling Blues because of what he heard, and he credits Roland Kirk for putting a lot of Rahsaan Roland Kirk's personality into Mingus's music. And Mingus said he basically went along with it, and that Mingus said he played in Kirk's style, and he said it came out like a farmyard smells. And I thought I think that's a really interesting way to think about it when you're listening to that track. Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am, he said he titled it because that's a saying that Max Roach kind of introduced to him. This idea, I guess, that it's cut and dry, right? Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am, it is what it is. And actually, supposedly the reasons for the quotations and this kind of cryptic thing is a reference to Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am that he heard from Max Roach. Eat That Chicken is kind of an interesting one because, and he kind of credits Fats Waller for inspiring this one. So if you think about Mingus's music, really across a lot of different albums, he incorporates his idea of characters. And typically these are almost like performance characters that in some ways evoke, I think invoke stereotypes. He incorporates like minstrel characters into some of his pieces as well. His reference to the clown. He references on the actual clown, the album. He references what else, like pimps in his music. Like he brings forward a lot of these like stereotypical characters and tries to put them into his music and essentially have some commentary about it. And so Eat That Chicken is one such example where he references Fats Waller, and what he talks about in this interview is how just amazingly talented that Fats Waller was. He was a serious musician. He studied at Juilliard. He was a classical composer. He was having his work sort of played in concert halls in Europe. And yet he couldn't get fair employment in the US. And so Mingus accuses him of essentially becoming a clown and kind of leaning into the stereotypes of what white audiences wanted in order to make music. And yet Mingus also confirms that it is happy music, and he doesn't fault Fats Waller for doing it, but at the same time he feels compelled to sort of comment on it. So I think that some of these examples, and if you want to understand more about Mingus's viewpoints, certainly his book, which is a little bit all over the place, but I've read it, and then certainly again this interview that I'm going to link in the description, I just think is fascinating. It's also a very well recorded interview. Sounds like it could have been done yesterday. So I would encourage folks to check that out. All right, so what to say about the music now, right? After all that, like history lesson or whatever. So Mingus said that the album Oh Yeah was not as carefully planned as other albums for Atlantic, and it came together and was sort of improvised in the moment. But what we now know is that it wasn't just improvised in the moment. It was played over and over again at venues like the Birdland and like a lot of what is captured here. And so those iterations is what I think makes this box set special. So yes, there is some duplication of tracks. In fact, there's quite a bit of it. As I mentioned, there's 7 different versions of Eat That Chicken, but again, most of them are not like full songs. And there actually isn't that much repetition otherwise. Like there's a lot of like different tracks on here, so it isn't just like it isn't just the same stuff by any means. But even when there is the same track, there's enough that is different, because these tracks again evolve, and sometimes they swapped in musicians, and so of course you're going to have a musician's interpretation of what Mingus wanted to be played. So two other quick things that I wanted to bring up that I think help characterize this music, and that is something that apparently Helen Merrill told Mingus. She said that, and this is a statement that she said that Mingus felt like he believed to be the case with his music as well. She said that she didn't want to appeal to the masses; she wanted to appeal to special people. And so I think that how we might interpret that is that not everybody has to be a fan of Mingus, and part of it I think you just kind of have to go along for the ride and find what you want to get out of it. And one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed Mingus is perhaps because I've spent the time listening to so much of his work and reading his biography and trying to understand him better, because it really does help me appreciate his music more when I understand his motivations. And so that is one of the big reasons why I'm spending so much time on this, if I'm not beating a dead horse here. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is actually something that Duke Ellington told Mingus, and that Mingus also felt like he wanted to internalize. He said, Duke Ellington said, he's trying to introduce people to the music that he would like to play. So I'll say that again. He's trying to introduce people to the music that he would like to play. And if I had to do like a ... like he has to do that over a period of time. So Mingus has music in his mind that is what he wants to play, but he can't play that right now because he's trying to lead the listener towards it, and he has to do it over a period of time. I would argue that the music that Mingus would like to play is represented on the Atlantic album "Let My Children Hear Music," which is full orchestra. I think is like the pinnacle of all that is Mingus, and that everything before that he was recording and all of these pieces that he was rehearsing led up to that recording, and I think it's a phenomenal. At the same time that it's perhaps some of his most complex work. So, okay, so the actual music, I can't, there's no shootout to do here because I had never heard the tracks before and I have not owned any of those bootleg recordings. What I can say about this music is both that it's fascinating, but also that the recording quality is definitely of that, non-professional live kind of thing. So do not expect any kind of audiophile recording here. Instead, what you get at times is inaudible instruments, and it's almost like overblowing where the microphone doesn't fully capture like all of the sound because it doesn't have sort of a wide enough it's not wide enough spectrum to capture all of the sonic material. Again, I mean, this was recorded for radio broadcast. Radio in 1961. Everybody's got to be listening on mono. And so that's what this content is. It's in mono, and it's not it's not audiophile. It doesn't make you feel like you're in the room at all. So the question, I suppose, for a lot of people is whether they think that they can appreciate music that when you're playing it on vinyl and not having it sound like it is this kind of glorious, like three-dimensional, like you can hear everything going on kind of sound. Instead, it does sound more like some of those recent John Coltrane live recordings, like I said up front, and it sounds like, probably not as good as the Monk Palo Alto session, and yet I just find there to be so much, not only charm in listening to it, but I'm just extremely interested in hearing Mingus's process, because that is so much about what I love about music. What I love about Charles Mingus's music. So it's kind of a complicated picture. So again, I suppose the question is, and this leads back to my earlier comment that Helen Merrill told Mingus, don't want to appeal to the masses, want to appeal to special people. If you're one of those people who really like Charles Mingus, then I think that this is just I think it's a must-have kind of thing, because it's such an interesting window into his process. If you're somebody who doesn't appreciate Mingus and you haven't heard Oh Yeah, or you have heard Oh Yeah and you don't like it, then you're probably not going to, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, I think, by going out and grabbing this. So, overall, certainly my recommendation is this is phenomenal, and it does a great job of achieving exactly what I think it was intending to do. I just know that this is like tailor-made for me, and I'm really digging it. I've listened to each of the sides several times at this point. Not all in one sitting. I couldn't do that, but I did listen to all the content, and I think it's fantastic. And will I go and revisit it? Yeah, I think that I'm going to, and I'm especially interested in the tracks not only that appear on Oh Yeah and be able to hear Oh Yeah and then hear these tracks, but the tracks that appear on other albums as well that were around the same time period, and being able to hear how they were worked out on these dates. So that's kind of what I think about this. So in conclusion, gosh, I almost want to apologize, because this is just such a different video for me in terms of how much, not only that I talked about history for the sake of history, but I feel like it was important to set the stage for what this box set is, and that's why I did it this way. So I would encourage folks to go, and you can preview this. In fact, even if you go to the Discogs listing for this box set, you'll see that there is, I think, a digital track of the entire 3 hours of content or whatever. I think you can go and listen to that. I would encourage folks who are interested in learning more about Mingus's process to listen to that interview, which I will link in the description as well. I hope this was helpful for people to understand what this is, help them decide whether it's something that they want to get as well. So thanks very much. If you've stuck with me, I do appreciate it. And I will, I guess I'll see you next time.